Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. We have an exciting episode today lined up. I'm excited about it because it's one of the problems that I find when we're working with our clients and all of these businesses that are in that growth mode. They've got a team in place. You have employees, whether it's an executive team or just a team of employees you're managing. If you want to get to that next level, which I think every small business owner wants to get to some degree, what do you do to bring your people with you? And how do you get them to up-level their skills as you are inevitably up-leveling yours? That is what I find holds most businesses back from scaling. And we're going to fix that problem today in like 15 minutes. I know, big promise, but I have an amazing guest with me. He is an author, a university instructor, a startup executive. The list goes on. And he also told me before we started recording, he is the most handsome man in the universe. So if you're listening to this episode, I highly recommend you jump on YouTube and watch the episode. But Mark Herschberg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It is my pleasure to be here.
So I'm honored to interview the most handsome man in the universe. Let me just say that first and foremost. But I mentioned the topic and what we're talking about today. You know, set the stage for me because that's what I see. That's at least my findings in working with our clients. Do you see the same thing as far as our employee and executive team skills holding back the growth of our company?
Absolutely. 20 some years ago, when I was hiring up teams for my startup companies, I found I could ask them a technical question. How do you do this in accounting? How do you do this in software? And I'd get an answer. But then I would ask a question like, what makes someone a good teammate? What is leadership to you? And I'd get these blank stares. We all have heard of these skills: leadership, networking, teamwork, negotiating, communication, but we actually never sit down and teach people how to do it. There's little or no formal training in school, little or no formal training in businesses, and we just kind of hope people figure it out as they go. But of course, hope is not a strategy. That's not how we run our business. Well, let's just do this and hope it works. We proactively create plans. And so many years ago, MIT had gotten feedback from companies saying, these are the skills we want to find, not just in recent grads, not just in engineers, in general. And we responded by putting together a program to instill these skills with our students. I've been teaching there for now over 20 years. And again, these are universal skills, not just for college grads or engineers. And in addition to my teaching there, I also wrote my book and now do speaking on the topic and have other resources to help companies at no cost to upskill their teams. Because as you pointed out, when you grow your business, you have to grow your skill sets, and you want to grow it not just for yourself, but your entire team.
Yeah, I mean, just on the surface, that's how you basically stay stuck managing people, is if you're constantly the one managing outcomes, managing decisions, everything like that, you will stay stuck in the center of your business. You have to delegate outcomes, delegate decisions, but you can only do that to people who have the skill set to handle those sorts of tasks and activities. Real quick though, I'm curious because when I think of MIT, I'm thinking engineering, data, science, like really, really smart people. And what we're talking about here is what would typically be defined as soft skills, quote unquote, right? Obviously very important skills and quite hard to learn in some cases. I don't know why they're called soft skills. How do you, is there a way to like quantify these skills and measure how good somebody is at them? Like what was your approach in developing this program?
Great question. There unfortunately is not always an easy way to do that. It turns out with negotiations, there are ways we can slightly measure who's a better negotiator. Even that, it's a little skewed. It's still basic examples. But this is what trips a lot of people up. And certainly with my students, especially, who are very quantitative and analytical, less so with the people I work with who are not MIT students, they do say, well, what's the formula for leadership? Or what's the 3-step process for networking? And it's not that simple. In fact, one of the things I love about being a manager and a leader is that there is no simple formula. I can tell you how to architect a software system to handle 1 billion events a minute. We have rules and processes and guidelines for how to do that. And if you give it to 10 people, we'll all design it mostly the same way. But if you think about managing people, every rule has an exception. Consider, for example, there's great wisdom like always hire people smarter than yourself. Now, that's good advice, and it's advice I try to follow. But if you put me in charge of a McDonald's, I'm not looking for a fry guy smarter than me. He's going to get really bored. So, for any rule, you can find an exception. You find a place where you need to do the opposite. And that's what makes it so interesting. And that's what makes it so subtle. So the way we need to teach these is really experiential, because we can't just say, here's a formula like we do in chemistry. We have to say, here are some guidelines. Here's how to think about it, and hopefully train you up well enough that you can now handle a myriad of situations.
Interesting way to put that too. And I'm thinking, a friend of mine told me that when law enforcement or the FBI, when they're training to spot fake licenses, fake IDs, they'll only look at real ones. And where I'm going with this is, my question is really, they do that so that when they see a fake ID, a fake license, they don't necessarily know why it's fake, but they have that gut feeling. They can feel that it's just not right. And that's how they know, because they're so trained to spot the real ones. Is that kind of what you're saying here with these softer skills? You train on what's right, what's a really good example, and then you kind of just know what's not?
Let's go even further. We trained in chemistry and history by learning formulas, learning dates, learning names. But when it comes to other things like music or sports, now I can teach you all the keys on the piano. I can tell you the rules of basketball, but you're not ready to play. You're not ready to perform in orchestra or play at a competitive level. You just know the rules. That's the start. There's a whole bunch of, we'll say, unwritten rules about playing basketball. When should you pass? When should you use this defense or this offense or this strategy? And that comes from practice. And we know we have it. It's called rehearsals. It's called scrimmage. But we don't do that work. At work, we say Monday morning, 9 a.m., go. Can you imagine a sports team where you're just playing competitive games all the time, no practice, no training? What we do is we have coaching, we watch the tape, we run drills, and we do scrimmage. And so we want to start to do the same thing with our work skills. And it's by practicing the skills and practicing the right skills. And just as you might practice, for example, in sports, what if you practice against a team that's faster than you, or a team that shoots better than you, and you'll try different situations? We can't tell you exactly the team you're going to face and how it's going to feel that day. But if we put you in these real-like experiences, if you look at all those different real licenses, you eventually say, well, I haven't been in this exact situation, but I can kind of feel what makes sense here. And so that's what we're doing. We're exposing you to a lot of different real practice scenarios. So when you get into an actual one, you've done enough of it. You've been on the court enough. You've played enough of pieces similar to this that you're ready to do this particular execution.
I love that analogy. It makes perfect sense. So when we're talking about, developing our team, our leadership team, our employees, where do we start with this? Because I assume you would not want to go to your team and say, you guys suck at leadership, we need to work on that. What's the proper way to identify, where somebody is, get that baseline, and then start to incorporate this practice?
The proper way is to start by saying, do we want to get better? Most people do. Many employees actually look, not just pay me money, but I want to learn, I want to grow. Now, even if they're not, you can find ways to talk about why it does benefit them, why it can help them specifically, why it can help the company overall. I know my companies, when I try to grow, I say, well, where am I going to fall in the hierarchy? My answer is always, I don't know. We're an early stage startup. We're going through high growth. But if you can step up and do these things, I'll explain what I'm looking for, then I'm going to hire under instead of over. And so that's the opportunity you face. Now, once you have people aligned to this, Creating a training program is incredibly simple. I'm going to break down, here's how to do it using the techniques we use at MIT, the same techniques used at top business schools. You want to create small cohorts of people. I recommend groups of about 6 to 8 people. You want them diverse. Now, yes, classic diversity, not just all men and all women in groups, but also diverse, not just all engineers and all salespeople. Mix up from the different roles, from the different experiences. The one area to be careful is seniority, because if you're putting a VP in the same group as a junior person, that can feel a little bit awkward, right? Seniority is the one area you want to be careful of. And we'll talk about what to do in a moment if you're a small company. So you create this diverse group. You have them meet, let's say, every other week. Create some cadence, once a month, weekly, whatever feels right. Get them some content. Now, yes, you can use my book if you want, but you can also use free content. You can use episodes from this podcast. You can use other podcasts. You can use articles, YouTube videos, whatever works. Have everyone read a few pages, read half a chapter, or watch the video or read an article, and then come together to discuss. This is key, because when you come to topics like leadership, again, there's no, well, this is how to lead 1, 2, 3. When you talk about leadership, you're going to say, well, here's how I would approach that situation. And you're going to say, well, it's interesting. I would have done it differently. Or here's a situation I had in the past. You don't want to talk about your current company, especially at small ones. I had this challenge at a prior company, and here's what I did, and what might other people have tried. And this is where we get to practice and scrimmage. Oh, here's what I would have done in that situation, or here's how I would have thought of that. And we're going to learn from each other, because again, there's no one answer, but by seeing different approaches and how people look at, say, oh, you have a different approach to leadership than I do. And it may not be completely right for me, but even knowing people will look at leadership differently, look at these skills differently, that informs how I'm going to execute on this. So just like in the scrimmage game, it's not that I'm going to play this exact game in the future, but by exploring different little aspects of it, and having been in situations like this before, I'm now ready for game time. If you do this, you're going to get 4 great advantages. First, you're going to upskill your entire team. Second, you're going to create better employee engagement. Again, they're happy to get more than just money. They want to get better. Third, you're going to foster internal networks. I'm amazed how even at companies of a handful of people, even as small as a dozen people, they don't seem to know what the other people are doing. Like, yeah, those are the sales folks. I don't really talk to them. Well, now you're going to be talking to them more often. And finally, you're going to create a common language and framework. If, for example, you pick the book Good to Great as the book you're going through together, well, then when you come out of it, you can say hedgehog, and everyone knows what you mean because they've all read the same book or the same article, and you create these shortcuts and these common understandings. All of this you get, it's free, there's no cost, and you can start training up your team today.
I love that. And it's cool because it also, I mean, stuff like that builds your culture too, right? Because you're building those little inside jokes with the team, and you're up-leveling your skills and your culture. Now, you did mention, I want to clarify this, that it was a little bit different for smaller teams. Can you just go over that real quick? If there's any nuances?
If you have a company that's just 6 people, or you feel, well, we have people at 3 different levels, and it's really hard to do this, and you said don't mix them. Here's what you can do. The people don't have to be just at your company. Find other small businesses. And I'm sure as a CEO, as an owner, you know other owners, Chamber of Commerce or other presidents groups, maybe even other people who listen to this podcast are looking to do the same. You can do this virtually, by the way. You can do this over Zoom. It doesn't have to be in person. In person's better if you can. So you can create cohorts of people across different companies. In fact, if you're in different industries, even better, because that broadens your perspective. So if you feel, well, we're a little small, we're a little close-knit, I don't know if we can do this, go find other companies and pair people from different companies together to get that diversity and get away from different levels of seniority together.
That's brilliant. I love that. And you're building community within the businesses, which probably builds all businesses up at the same time. So that's a really cool tip. I didn't think of that. And I want to touch on one thing too, because I think what the common misconception, I'll say, in the marketplace is So when you ask somebody on your team to maybe increase their skills or do a little bit more, there's generally a pushback for, fork over the cash first, pal, right? So I want to hear from you, because it's a valid concern and a valid point, but at the same time, it's the conversation of the chicken or the egg. Like, well, maybe we don't have the funds right now to pay you more because we need to get better at what we're doing, and then we'll have those funds to pay you more. So how do you approach that conversation if someone were to say, if you go to them and say, here's what we're going to do as a team, we're all going to up level our skills, and someone comes back and says, I would love a raise before we did that. How do you handle that, Mark?
I have not come across that situation. Now, I've seen people, if you say, I want you to do more work, I
Mm,
am giving you more responsibility. They say, wait a second, you're changing
yeah.
the rules here. Now pay me more. But if you're saying, I just want to help improve you, most people say, thank you. In fact, that is compensation to me. I would love to get better at leading, at communicating, at any of these. Now, if you're saying, I want you to spend 6 hours every weekend doing this on your own time, okay, again, now you're changing the rules. We're saying, no, on company time. Remember, we're saying an hour every other week. This is not a huge time commitment. Most people will say, I am glad to do this. Now, in the future, what happens if they all get much better in terms of skills? Well, hopefully they're now doing a better job. You're executing better. The pushback I most often get is when it comes to negotiation training. So here's what I tell employees. Say, imagine if you got 1% better at every negotiation. And so that means, of course, the next time you take a job, you get 1% more. If you're negotiating a job for $100,000 and you're 35 years old, you negotiate, get $1,000 more. If you stay in that job for another 30 years until you retire, so you just negotiated for 5 minutes for this job, $1,000 more, that's $1,000 times 30 years. 5 minutes just got you $30,000. But of course, you're going to get more than $1,000. You're going to not stay in the job for a year. You can add 5 figures, even 6 figures to your income. Then HR, the founders go, oh my God, wait, you're telling my employees how to get more money. Said, well, yes, but imagine if everyone in your company was now 1% better at every negotiation. Every sales deal is 1% more. Every partnership is 1% more. Every internal negotiation where teams come together and say, you do the boring part. I want to do the fun part. No, the other way. If you get through those conflicts faster, better, and of course, with negotiations, it's not a zero-sum game. We teach you how to broaden the pie. Say, yes, your employees will say they want more, but they will be delivering more, and there's going to be more pie for everyone. So these skills, they're going to help your employees do better. They will help your company do better, and there's going to be more pie, and you can give people bigger slices.
That's awesome. I love that perspective. And it sounds like from the original question, it's really about how you frame it. It's not saying I want you to be more, I want you to learn more. It's I want to help you. I want to help you increase your skills, develop your career. And if that benefits this company, fantastic, but it will benefit you in your career. I just fundamentally love that approach. So I have also found that when a company puts its employees first, their career development and their skill development first, those people are far less likely to leave the organization. And it's also way harder because most companies aren't doing this, and they're going to go see where the grass is greener, and it's really not. So I think if you were to incorporate this stuff in your company, it actually makes your workplace much more desirable. And in the 19 minutes that we've been talking, I'm sure we've only scratched the surface, Mark. So where can the listener go to really dive deep into this and learn what you have to offer?
You can go to my website, thecareertoolkitbook.com. There you can learn more about me, more about the book. You can buy, of course, on Amazon and other places. I put out new articles every week. I have a number of completely free resources on the resources page. Just click and download. You don't even need to give me your email address because I have nothing else to sell you. The very first download is actually details on how to build this program we're talking about. So you can go to the resources page, download it, and use it however you want. And then there's also a free app with all the advice in my book that you can get from the iPhone and Android store. That's also linked from the website. So all of this is available at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And wherever you're watching and listening, that'll be down in the show notes below. along with all of Mark's links. He's got so many cool things to offer you. I promise I checked out all of them before this interview, and you're going to want to go click around down there. Mark, I appreciate that. But I want to end this episode, as I end all the episodes, with a question. And it's a question for a question, actually. So we believe at What If that powerful questions get powerful answers. That's why there is an obnoxious lit up question mark behind me. But I want you to leave the audience with a powerful question that they can ask themselves until they get an answer, as long as it takes. What is that question that they should be asking based on this interview so that they can up-level their team, up-level their skills, grow their company, whatever it may be? What are you going to leave the listener with?
What would happen to your business if all your employees got 1% better? What happens if it's more than 1%?
Ouch. That's a good question. I think you're going to like the answer if you think about it. Mark, thank you so much for being here. This was phenomenal.
Thanks for having me.
Wherever you're watching, listening, first and foremost, go check out the resources down below. I promise you don't want to miss them. And number two, make sure you subscribe. We love bringing these episodes to you every single day of the week to get your business 1% further every single day. That's what we try to do here, is help you grow your business and get out of the way so you get your time freedom back. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for listening.